And when I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
Jameson Williams has been so impressive these last couple of weeks.
What is going on, Cover One Universe? You are back with myself, Rich Haynes, Burner Sports, and Russell Brown, our resident NFL draft expert here at Cover One on this week's edition of the Cover One NFL Draft Weekly, where we're going to kind of do a little recap, check out what our thoughts are on how teams did around. We're going to probably focus in on the AFC this week and see what we thought of different drafts, that happened 1 week ago today in the NFL. And obviously would be interested in your questions out there in the chat. As always, please give us a follow at Burner Sports on Twitter and at Russ NFL Draft on Twitter. My man, it's over. Are you sad? How do you feel right now that all that work is done and the draft is over? What's going through your mind?
Yeah, I mean, it's bittersweet. It's one of those things, you grind for months and months and months, almost a year basically, and then it's basically over. But, I'm excited for really this weekend to kind of just get away. I'm going to go out to Fowlerville. My son's got a game. He's got multiple games. So, I won't be having my computer on. I probably won't be very active on Twitter. Just going to take a break for a couple days, and, I'll pick up a little bit next week. But just, taking a break from radio and podcasts. I love doing it. But the final 6 to 8 weeks is such a grind of, I think, what was it? Monday? Was it Monday? Maybe it was Tuesday. One of those 2 days, I had 6 radio spots and 2 podcasts after a whole day job and everything else. And I was like, man, I thought the draft was over. So, look, I'm excited. I'm excited to obviously be in here talking draft. I'm always excited to talk about it, but it wears on you a little bit. But fortunately, got my good friends from Sparkling Ice here, which are trying to get sponsored by them. It's probably not going to happen, but it's so damn, this drink is so good. It's phenomenal.
I think I actually have some of those in my fridge. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm pretty sure I do. Tonight, though, I did do bourbon night for you. I just went with the old basic Miller Lite tonight. Just
attaboy.
I actually, I came in hot right off the golf course. I'm actually still in my.
How'd you shoot?
Not good. It's got early season. It's raining. Not great, but it's always good to get out on the course a little bit. We just do 9-hole league. With some friends around here. And, obviously it's always good just to get out there, knock them around, throw back some beers at the end of the day. So I was coming in hot from the golf course. Also moving too, just from a personal note, our family is moving. We're building a house. We just sold this one, signed papers yesterday in this current home until May 20th. And then we'll be out of here. So there's a lot of boxes going on and everywhere other than behind me. Really, there's just boxes everywhere and all that kind of stuff.
So I'm sure you're happy the draft is over. I mean, you can focus on not this. You can focus on packing up. And are you moving far? Or are you just a little bit?
Just like 20 minutes. Not far, just down south. We're actually right on Lake Erie, which is kind of cool, but we're far away from everyone else. So we're moving down south about 20 minutes, a little more square footage. So it's with the 2 kiddos running around, it'll certainly be.
You live
nice
on the lake?
What was that?
You live on the lake?
Yeah. Well, the lake literally is across the street. So I'm not on I call it the rich side of Lake Road. I am on the poor side of Lake Road, but you can literally see the lake from my front yard. It's pretty cool.
That's unreal. That's very cool. Growing up on that lake, that's pretty badass.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I'm going to miss it for sure. But like I said, we wanted a little more room, and there's no place to build where we're at in this current community. It's an old established community, so there's no more room. But you know what? Let's dive in a little bit. Again, if you're out there listening and you want to get your questions in from a chat standpoint, please go ahead and do that. What we're going to do a little bit different. I know obviously on this show, usually we have a lot of Bills Mafia on here from the Cover One Network. Obviously love you guys. Russell was actually on some shows this week. I believe with Anthony was one of them, I believe, Disguised Coverage. breaking down the picks. So if you haven't, grabbed that show, go out there and get it. We will certainly talk about the Bills, but I want to get Russell's opinion and throw my opinions out there a little bit on other teams in the AFC, because obviously the Bills and my Browns, and we have to play teams in the AFC that also drafted probably some very nice players. So I'm curious to get Russell's opinion. So we're going to go around the AFC. If we can get to the NFC, we certainly will. But I want to start in the AFC a little bit and just get your opinion. So I think, outside of Buffalo, obviously you have the Dolphins, the Patriots, the Jets in the AFC East. I'm not going to start with the obvious one, which in my opinion would be the Jets. We'll kind of hold off on them for a minute. Let's start with the Dolphins. Miami didn't have a ton of picks in this draft. I believe their first pick was in the 3rd round. They took Channing Tindall out of Georgia, a linebacker. They came into the draft, in my opinion, with some offensive line needs at tackle, some linebacker, maybe running back even. I'm not a big fan of what they have, even though they got Chase Edmonds in free agency. I don't love what they have going at running back. So they didn't have a ton of picks. But curious on your take of their draft overall, and I guess maybe specifically Channing Tindall, because I believe he was in your draft guide and you had him ranked around 90th, I believe. So what's your thoughts on the Dolphins draft?
I mean, 4 picks, it's hard to, and for anybody watching tonight or going to go back and watch this, just know, like, I don't really do grades. I did them last night with Anthony a little bit. Like, it's fun to do a little bit of them, but realistically, like, it's really hard for me to be like, yeah, this team got an A, this team got a B. Like, sure, we can sit here and say the Ravens and the Jets had a very good draft because on paper, off of my guide, anybody else's draft guide, it all fits. It's like the Ravens draft was out. They blew it out of the park. But at the same time, or they knocked it out of the park. But at the same time, like when you look at the Dolphins, like 4 picks, it's going to be really hard for me to be like, yeah, they really did a great job. I do think the first 2 picks that they had, the 3rd and the 4th rounder, Channing Tindall here and Eric Uzakanama, I think is how you say his name, the receiver from Texas Tech. These 2 guys, I think, can contribute right away. Tinding is probably going to rotate in and out, maybe be part of some depth. Just simply because of the linebacker position in itself. Sometimes you see these guys get drafted and then they don't really play right away. It takes a year for them to kind of learn the defense and learn their coverages and whatever they're going to do. But, he's got pretty good sideline to sideline ability, strong, physical, long arms. He's going to be effective, I think, as a blitzer. I think he adds that as a pass rusher off the edge. So he's going to be somebody that the Dolphins will utilize, I think, quite a bit, especially down the road. And really, these 4 picks might not necessarily be about this year. It's more so about next year. And they did enough, I think, in free agency with the signing of Armstead and the trading for Tyreek Hill. Like, offensively, they're going to be okay. Defensively, they were already pretty solid. Adding Tindall right in the middle of their defense, again, it's just a nice little depth piece. Maybe he ends up starting 7 to 10 games or something like that down the road. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, it was a good pick. I think being that he was still there on the board, it makes sense to draft him. And then obviously with the receiver out of Texas Tech, I mean, he's a big-bodied guy, threatens vertically up the field, has some really good body control and some of these acrobatic catches that we see some of these other wide receivers pull off in this draft that went earlier in the draft as well. So I think this is kind of a late round guy that maybe you hope eventually maybe turns into that Devontae Parker type player for your offense down the road. But it might take a little bit of time. I mean, he's a 4th round pick. They might strike gold here. You never know. Having the presence of Tyreek Hill opposite of him or in the slot or wherever is obviously going to be very beneficial for him. But then, the other 2 guys, I don't really know much about. Skylar Thompson, I do. Cameron Good, not much. You're just talking about a depth linebacker. It really just seems like, they were like, hey, we got 4 picks. We're going to take 2 offensive guys, 2 defensive guys, call it a day. It's hard to work with 4 picks when you're the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. I know, you're not a big fan of grades. So I think what we'll try to do tonight is, just kind of almost like a pass fail or, just got by. So we're going to go give him a woo. Give him a woo. If you really like the draft, we're going to give him a meh.
A Ric Flair woo?
A Ric Flair woo. A meh. We'll go a meh if it's like, okay. Or a vomit.
Yeah.
If you just don't like the draft at all. So for me, I don't know. I didn't really like the Dolphins draft. Again, you're right with 4 picks. So I'll give them just a meh right here. Yeah. I don't think they could do much with the 4 picks. I guess the linebacker is a decent, direction there. He's going to probably slot in at least initially behind a Landon Roberts, inside somewhere linebacker there. And to your point, probably ends up getting some starts, as he gets his feet wet and learns the defensive calls and all that. But not a huge fan. I think especially as we compare, I think one thing we can do is compare other teams in the AFC East to the Bills draft, which we'll get to the Bills in a little bit. But, I certainly think the Bills draft, in my opinion, was better than Miami. And again, the picks have a lot to do with that. The fact that you only have 4, but I think no brainer there. I think the Bills were in better shape, just purely draft perspective, than the Dolphins. Let's go ahead and stay in the AFC East. Let's head to the New England Patriots, who, again, me, I guess I almost gave them a grade right off the bat with it. Not sure, but the Patriots, they went, out of left field a little bit with Cole Strange at 29 overall. You never get mad when you're adding offensive linemen. Personally, they needed a guard, so I guess that makes sense. But I don't know if you know much about Cole, if you were able to, kind of look at his game a little bit after they made that pick, since it was such a surprise pick. But what do you think about the Patriots draft? I'll make one other comment before I let you go. In your analysis, they cut Tyquan Thornton out of Baylor, burner, second round wide receiver. I made the joke on Twitter that, he might be, fast, but how is Mac Jones going to actually get him the football? I literally think that's going to be a problem. If you're going to use that, his vertical skill set to get down the field from a burner perspective, I have big questions that Mac's going to be able to deliver the ball downfield. But, let's see. They took Bailey Zappi too, quarterback, 4th round. Interesting, maybe potential backup pick there out of Western Kentucky. So what's your thoughts on the New England Patriots?
Well, they certainly swung for the fences. And they're just hoping that all of these end up being home run type players. Smartest team in the room. Definitely like a meh for me when we talk about an overall feeling of their draft. Cole Strange really seemed like he wasn't getting out of the second round. So I understand why they took him. They needed a player on the interior offensive line. He did well down at the Senior Bowl, 6'5", 305, one of those guys that, he is stout against those physical defenders, but he also at times his anchor will get tested, his hand placement will get tested. But again, when you're talking about center guard versatility, you need that on your offensive line, especially when you're a team like the Patriots, and they're going to put an emphasis on obviously running the football. And if you don't believe me, just look at their draft. They drafted 2 running backs, essentially 2 rounds apart from each other. Pierre Strong, 5'11", 207. He might end up being somebody that you see a little bit more in fantasy or something like that. Maybe he's a late round pick. I don't know why they took 2 running backs. I get it. They've always kind of had that value for the position, but you have Damian Harris, you have Ramondre Stevenson. They just drafted Stevenson last year. Taking Pierre Strong, I get it. Maybe that elusiveness, that change of pace, that pass catcher out of the backfield type guy for your offense, that makes sense. But then to go out and get Kevin Harris from South Carolina wasn't even on my radar. I don't even think really was on anybody's radar. He had a pretty bad season last year, just from an overall production standpoint. It was coming off of back surgery. So he must have just interviewed well or something, or they know something we don't know about him. I don't know. I kind of watched a little bit of him after the fact, because I was like, why did they draft this guy? And that's kind of the thing. Like, why were they drafting some of these guys in the 6th round? It's odd draft. Lacita Smith, Marquise Hayes. I mentioned this on this guy's coverage last night. They were interior offensive linemen that went in the 6th and 7th round late in the draft. There was no reason to why, if you needed offensive line help, why they passed on those types of players. Again, maybe there was a medical check or something. Maybe there was a character concern. I don't know. But Marcus Jones, Tyquan Thornton, I think Thornton is maybe that just speedster that offense needs. Maybe they're hoping that, yes, absolutely smash that like button. But I think maybe Thornton is just that speedster that the offense is, you're hoping, one, he brings special teams value, which we know that the Patriots value, but also maybe it's just they want him to go vertically and hope that Mac Jones can get him the ball, or it opens everything else underneath. Strategy, right? Like that's just kind of the pick.
That's a good point right there. That, I was caught up in making the joke about Mac Jones because for whatever reason, even though I'm a Browns fan, when he was coming into the draft, I didn't like him for whatever reason. So I take every opportunity I can to take shots at Mac. But yeah, obviously getting a guy that can take the top off of defense, even if, your quarterback maybe can't give him the ball downfield as consistently as you would like. Certainly helps open up things underneath for the other wide receivers that they have on that team. And, a question here from Vlad, as Thornton has very small hands. And we had another answer to that, 8, and I did, we did confirm that 8.25 inches, which, is pretty small. To put that in perspective, from a quarterback standpoint, I believe Kenny Pickett had the smallest hands this year at 8.5, if I'm not mistaken. And traditionally, I think just, thinking about quarterbacks, you usually like to see somebody 9.5. Not that hand size means everything, but usually you're talking about a quarterback that has some larger hands. So the wide receiver position as well. You want somebody with those big mitts to go ahead and catch that ball. So Thornton's hands are not the largest from a pass catching standpoint.
No, it's not. And I mean, I don't know how they're going to utilize him. I would like to figure out a Patriots draft at some point in my life, but I never will. I mean, they're the team that I never get right on my mock drafts. So I have no idea. I never would have guessed that they would have gotten out of the spot that they were in to take Cole Strange and let Tyler Linderbaum go to the Baltimore Ravens. They were in prime position to get the best center in the draft, and they took a guy that's probably going to end up carving out an 8 to 10 year career for them and be very solid. But it just makes no sense, but they got a bunch of draft capital out of it. So I get it. But it just, again, the players that they took with that capital, it's just very head scratching. Marcus Jones, though, I think is probably the guy that is the sleeper pick of it all. 5'8", 175-pound nickel, very physical player, does a really good job playing through the catch point, aggressive when the ball is in the air. And one of those guys that was going to be at the Senior Bowl, he ended up not being at the Senior Bowl. He's also got that kick return, punt return ability. I know there was a question on, did Thornton ever return anything? He did have 8 or maybe 10 kick returns in his career. Punts, no, but you can teach that stuff. That's fairly easy to teach. So, I mean, overall, very meh draft. I mean, I think they're really hoping that Strange, Thornton, Marcus Jones, probably even Jack Jones and Pierre Strong, they're probably hoping all of those guys end up hitting. Wouldn't surprise me if the 7th round pick, Andrew Stuber, ended up making the team. He's a very strong player, has very good length, has that guard tackle flexibility, probably going to be a guard for them. But he was fun to watch. I mean, when I had COVID, I watched his tape, and I just kept watching it over and over again. And very technically sound at times, maybe too much forward lean. His anchor would get tested, as I mentioned, with Cole Strange. So both offensive linemen that they took, I think, just need to get a little bit stronger, or 2 of the 3 offensive linemen. I don't know much about Haynes out of LSU, but 2 out of those 3 guys, if they can get stronger, I think both of them can start for them down the road. And to get Stuber in the 7th round, I was a little surprised that he was there. So, it's okay. But again, it's just one of those drafts. Like, we'll probably look back at it 3-4 years from now and be like, what were they doing?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm going to give, the Patriots a vomit grade. I don't like it. I don't like what they did really at all throughout any of their picks. Certainly not the same level of expertise as you, but looking at it from my perspective, don't like what they've done there. And to your point, they always have weird drafts. So hey, it's interesting, and they don't have Tom Brady to bail them out of weird drafts anymore. So we'll see if this catches up to the Patriots. Here quite shortly. Vlad's question, what do you think of the Bills draft? We're going to get to the Bills. So hang on with us. We're trying to go around the NFL a little bit. We're going to stick in the AFC East here for a moment. Then we're going to get to the Bills. Certainly, I think, we both most likely like the Bills draft more than both the Patriots and the Dolphins, but we'll get to that here in a moment. But let's go to the Jets. Let's stick here in the AFC East, get some opinions on the Jets draft. I think, you mentioned it right off, kind of right off the top of the show. Certainly one of the stronger drafts, of the weekend. I think everybody thinks that. And, I'm starting to, I'm looking at the draft, they Sauce Gardner, right off the bat. Then they came back, Garrett Wilson, awesome. They traded up Jermaine Johnson, who was falling, took Breece Hall, which, was in the cards maybe for the Bills, and a lot of Bills fans were liking him. Took Jeremy Ruckert out of Ohio State, who I think is a very underrated tight end, was not utilized nearly as much in college as he probably could have been. He was a huge recruit for Ohio State. And again, they just did not get him the ball, in my opinion, as much as they could have. Max Mitchell and Michael Clemens kind of rounding out, the end of their draft there in picked in round 4, but huge names. So are we just maybe infatuated with the names because they're at skill positions and everybody kind of knew of these players, or was it truly that strong of a draft based on need and then filling those positions for the Jets.
Yeah, no, I mean, these are talented football players that they got, and they got guys that can help from day one. I mean, Sauce Gardner was my top corner. Garrett Wilson was a top 3 receiver for me. Jermaine Johnson was a top 10 player in the draft for me. Breece Hall was a top 3 back. I mean, they got some really talented guys, and they're all going to contribute. Sauce Gardner should be a shutdown corner for them. I mean, I'm going to be honest. Like, it's going to be very fun to watch him against Stephon Diggs, very fun to watch him against Gabriel Davis. It's going to be fun to watch him against any receiver in the league that he matches up with because he's got such great length and athletic ability, very fluid lower half, quick feet. He's going to play on the boundary for the Jets, and Saleh understands how to utilize a player like that. He had a player by the name of Richard Sherman once upon a time in San Francisco who only played on the boundary, so he'll figure that out. Garrett Wilson, I get it. The Bills fans probably aren't excited about it, but as just a football fan, this helps Zach Wilson. The Wilson to Wilson connection should work. I mean, Garrett Wilson runs his routes like a point guard. He understands how to change his pace when he's running his routes. He has very good body control and makes good adjustments to the football. So, I really think this is a solid pick for them. Jermaine Johnson, how he fell, I have no idea. No freaking idea. I thought when Baltimore moved back up in the draft, that's who I thought they were taking. I was like, oh, they're getting Jermaine Johnson, and they're doubling down on defense, and they're going to kill it. I thought the Packers were going to probably take them. You look at some of these teams and they pass on them, but it was a great pick. And the Jets, again, Breece Hall, Jeremy Ruckert, those guys are going to contribute. Hall could very well be the starter. Michael Carter could be the number 2. Michael Clemens in the 4th round. Max Mitchell, nice depth piece for the offensive line, which they need. But again, we'll see how he ends up being in 2 years from now. But Michael Clemens is a San Francisco 49er defensive lineman that ends up going to the Jets because of that coaching staff. He screams Robert Saleh, great length, very strong, versatile. I thought he was somebody I wish I would have watched more of. I watched him primarily because I did an NBC spot down for the NBC TV show down at College Station down in Texas A&M a few weeks back, and we had to talk about Michael Clemens. And I like, the more and more I watched, I was like, man, I wish I would have watched this guy more before the draft. But just being able to watch him, I mean, he's gonna end up being one of those guys as a mid-round find. So yeah, the Jets, I thought they crushed it. Probably one of maybe the 2 best drafts in the entire thing between them and the Ravens. So yeah, they crushed it.
Yeah, Spin's comment, 2 top 10 picks, another first round, kind of hard to not hit home runs when you have that type of draft capital. But, what I'll say to that is, while, yeah, that's true. Obviously, if you have more bullets in the chamber, right, you're more likely to hit. But you also have seen plenty of drafts where these, whether it's GMs, coaches, whoever's in charge of making the picks, they get too cute. And a lot of time, in a lot of those situations, maybe they overthink. Again, obviously they have their own draft boards. They have their own evaluations of talent based on what they feel they need for their scheme. So it's sometimes going to be certainly different than what the media puts out there and what, any of us put out there that are looking at tape. But yeah, they didn't overthink it. They did make, some very solid picks. And again, going into this, discussion here on the Jets, I was just trying to think of a way to play devil's advocate a little bit, because for me, it's just hard to think that the Jets got something this right, even though I'm not, a Bills fan. They just traditionally don't, do that. But yeah, they've made some nice decisions here the last couple of years, and certainly potentially could end up being a little bit of some competition in the AFC East, a year or 2 down the road once these players have a chance to marinate and get used to the NFL, the NFL life. But let's stay here. So if you're just joining, we are going around the NFL a little bit. We're going to give our opinions on different teams' drafts. We're not doing grades or ABC. We're doing some different things. We're going woo, little Ric Flair woo. And I think, hey, you got to do it. What's your take on the Jets? What's your all right. So we're doing woo for the Jets. We're kind of meh. We don't like it. And we're giving the vomit sound if we hate it. And the Patriots got a vomit sound out of me, which I think some folks liked in the chat a little bit ago. So, let's pivot to the Bills. Again, for those of you that didn't catch Russell with Anthony Prescott Disguised coverage this week, go check that show out. They really went in depth, in my opinion, on the Bills picks. But we'll spend a few minutes here today on the Bills picks as well and kind of compare how we feel that their draft went to their AFC East competition. Buffalo, of course, started off, in round one at the cornerback position with Kaiir Elam out of the University of Florida. Then they followed up with James Cook, running back out of Georgia, continued down the rest of their draft board. Took a linebacker that, Terrell Bernard out of Baylor, who I think I'm curious of your opinion on that. I'm sure you talked about with Anthony. I was actually live on air when that pick happened with the Cover One draft night coverage, and it was pretty funny because everyone kind of was like, what's going on? And they had this like hour-long kind of come to Jesus like therapy session about that pick. They weren't sure how there was a path to the field for Terrell Bernard based on just, his playing style and what's potentially available snap count wise, on the Bills defense. So curious your pick there, or your take on that pick. And then Khalil Shakir, who I actually wanted the Browns to take personally, so I like that pick. Punt God, so on and so forth. So what's your take on, some of those high picks for the Bills, starting with Kaiir Elam, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, I mean, for the punt God, if you want my take on that, you can listen to last night. Go back and listen to the Disguised Coverage show. I'm not talking about punters tonight. I mean, I basically had stated like he was punting 10 yards more per average over Matt Hack. So we're talking basically he's forcing a team to gain an additional first down every time he takes the field. So just take it as that and run with it. But for Kaiir Elam, look, I like this pick a lot. I guessed it correctly. It screamed the type of player that I thought the Bills would really like, and how I just kind of tied it in with what beat reporters were kind of saying, and even just with some of the things that I had heard a little bit. But Elam is going to be a solid number 2 corner playing opposite of Trey White. He has got great length position, great athletic ability for the position, very good press man corner for them. He'll have to get a little bit better in zone. His tackling technique can certainly get a little bit better. But overall, they needed a corner. And I said this probably 2 years ago. I think I wrote about it in the summertime. I was like, the Bills are pulling a Detroit Lions and they're neglecting the position. Nothing against Levi Wallace, who was out there for almost 1,000 snaps this past year, but he was like very up and down in his career. And they needed a number 2, and they were able to fortunately get that here with Kaiir Elam, I think. And I mean, it might not happen overnight. He might have his struggles at times, but for fans out there, I would stick by his side and keep rooting for him, because I think all of it is there for him to be very good. And I think he can be, and I think he fell in the right spot. He's not going to have, a bunch of, no, Punt God was not their best pick. I don't know. Okay. He's messing. Okay. I was like, wait, what? But yeah, I mean, with Elam, it's, thank you, Amy. Thank you. But yeah, with Elam, again, like I said, he fell to a great spot. He's not like in Miami or anywhere like where there's a bunch of, I'm not saying like Buffalo, there's nothing to do, but like you don't have all this off the field limelight type of stuff that you got going on that some players do. Like they're very culture focused, I think, in this locker room. They're very focused on winning and trying to bring a championship to that town. And I think Elam's going to be a piece of the puzzle there. So I'm intrigued to see how it overall works out for him, especially year 1, but really year 2. I think that'll be when it all kind of clicks for him. And Trey White, even healthier off of a torn ACL, I think that'll do wonders. But James Cook, very fun pick. Not necessarily my favorite back in this draft, but as I said last night, if you were doing mock draft simulators and you kept having Kenneth Walker or Breece Hall fall to you and you kept going, well, we can get him here. I told you a long time ago they weren't going to be there. Both those guys went top 45. Kenneth Walker goes exactly 41st overall, similar to Jonathan Taylor. Not saying he's Jonathan Taylor, but it wouldn't surprise me if he just ended up being a lot better as a pro than people are probably giving him credit for. And ultimately, he should have been your top back, and he'll prove you wrong, prove everybody wrong on that and prove me right. But James Cook, like the fit, going to be a fun option as a receiving back, somebody that I think that they need. He eventually will probably become the starting running back at some point. He's very, I think, versatile in the sense that you'll see him, pre-snap motion into the slot. He's going to align there at times, and then he's going to shift into the backfield. He's going to do a lot of different things. And he's kind of got that home run threat ability, very fast on the field, one of those guys that can just run. And that's what they need. They needed a guy that can run. There's times where Motor and Moss, those guys are very like hesitant at times. They're trying to absorb the contact before it even arrives. Where a Cook, I'm not saying he's got the best contact balance of anybody. No, I don't think he does, but he understands how to bend on certain zone runs, how to break on certain zone runs. He understands all of it. And when he needs to hit it, he hits it. And I think that's the key. We said last night, one key thing with him, he's got to let the blocks develop. I think he will. So we'll see what happens within time. I don't know if he's necessarily going to be like the day one guy. I think 10 to 12 touches is exactly what you want him to be, but it was a good pick. It was a need for them, and their top two needs, corner and running back, were probably the two most common positions that were mocked to them in the first round and probably the second round. So they got those two needs out of the way. The linebacker, look, I'm still kind of scratching my head. I don't know exactly where he's going to fit on the field, especially year one. And really, is it just because you're going to blitz him off the edge? Are you going to blitz him up the middle? Are you dropping him into zone coverage or hoping that he takes tight ends or running backs? Maybe. But, I mean, he probably played at 215, 220 pounds this past year. He checked in at 224. You got to hope he sustains his weight, muscle, and all that stuff, and he can play around 228 maybe in the NFL to really withstand contact. I mean, he's had some injury concerns, had a bad shoulder. I believe it was a knee injury back in 2017 or 2018. So he's one of those guys that injuries have already kind of compiled over his career. And when I look at this pick, I just instantly started thinking Kerryon Johnson of when the Detroit Lions like forced their hand to a position. Kind of the same thing here. The Bills, I think, forced themselves to take a linebacker that maybe fits what they're looking for because of maybe character or maybe because of athletic ability. Not discrediting the player or the athlete, but again, I just don't see where he fits outside of maybe special teams and maybe a third down role. If that's all they need out of him, then I guess that's a win. But to take him in the third round was just quite the head scratcher for me. So like that was the only issue. If they would have taken him in the fourth round, I probably would have been like, that's a good pick, makes sense. But they took him in the third round, and I could never wrap my head around it. And lastly, Khalil Shakir, I really like this pick. I think he's got a veteran release package. He's going to play in the slot. He can also play outside. He's got some drop concerns. Really happened this past year. He had 10 drops this past year, 18 overall in the course of his career. But he is, 6 foot, 190. Reminds me a little bit of like a Robert Woods. I think Bills fans are going to hope that he becomes an Amon-Ra St. Brown. Just maybe needs to get a little bit stronger. He fits in this offense. He's going to see the field. And with Cole Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders gone, there's about 1,400 snaps or so that they've got to figure out. Gabriel Davis will pick up some, but there's certainly enough for Shakir to go around. And the day 3 picks, the late ones, I don't know a ton about those guys. They're just they're depth pieces, and that's it. And that's okay. I mean, that's all you need.
Yeah, one thing that I was pre-draft, we were talking obviously a ton about the Bills selections, and I think both. We went back and forth a little bit. I think I was pretty solidly on. I wanted the Bills, to take a cornerback, or I thought they should take a cornerback. Heck, as a Browns fan, I wanted them to take punt guy in the first round, but obviously that didn't happen. So, I wanted them to take a cornerback. I thought that was the biggest bang for their buck there, instead of potentially taking, a running back there, because all of a sudden towards the end of, leading up to the draft, Breece Hall started getting mocked a lot by people to the Bills. And, I think people were hoping, hey, maybe we get Breece Hall and then a cornerback is going to fall to us in the second round. I think they did the right thing. They took Kaiir Elam, I think it was the 4th cornerback off the board. And if you look at people or corners specifically that would have been there, late round 2, early round 3, I think a lot of Bills fans were hoping that somebody like Cam Taylor-Britt would have fallen to them at the end of round 2. He went 3-4 picks ahead with the Bengals. And I guess not to say that maybe if the Bills took a running back, they may not have tried to move up, but you would have to use draft capital to do that. And then in my opinion, if you look at some of those cornerbacks in round 3, the Browns, in my opinion, we'll get to them in a little bit, but I think, they made a little bit of a reach on Martin Emerson, although I do like his size. I'm really curious about your take on him as we head over to the AFC North in a little bit. And if you look at some of the other corners, Cordell Flott to the Giants out of LSU in round 3, Marcus Jones, we already talked about and touched on with the Patriots, as well. I think they made the right choice by going corner in round 1. And then, getting somebody like Cook at running back in round 2, which also was a need. And we had some comments going up here in the chat, hey, he's going to be mainly a third down guy, or maybe, he's going to be, maybe in special teams role. And I think to your point, with the Bills roster at running back, I don't see any reason why, if he flashes, he can't at some point towards the second half of that season, as long as he's able to pick up blitz coverages and all that kind of stuff, be able to grab a huge share of RB1, really. I just, Devin Singletary, I don't mind him as a player, but he's obviously not lit the world on fire. Zach Moss, I actually really liked him as a player, even from a fantasy perspective. He hasn't lit the world on fire. Duke Johnson is Duke Johnson at this point. He's really your third down guy, in my opinion, if you really want to, slot somebody in there. So I think James Cook could really grab a larger share of that backfield, as long as he can pick up the offense and do some of those things. So I think that was, they made the right choice in terms of, in my opinion, cornerback first, and then waiting to see what kind of running back fell to them in the second round. And again, we've talked about it in the past, but premium positions, unfortunately, running back's just not a premium position in the NFL. So they went and grabbed a premium position at cornerback. You got to defend the pass in the NFL, where I think they definitely dropped the ball. And again, I believe it was in chat. I think I said it, right before the pick happened live on the Cover 1 Draft Night show. I think they should have went offensive line instead of, the linebacker in the third round. Parham was sitting there, as well as a few others, if I recall, at that point. And I just think that they've had question marks on their offensive line for a while, and some of it's stabilized here and there. But I just think adding, you can never, I don't know, they get Ryan Stafford in the mix at right guard. I just think you can never have too many good offensive linemen. And when you have a potent offense and you want to protect, Josh Allen, you want to maybe be able to do some things in the run game that you couldn't do. I just think that would have been a bigger impact position there. And they didn't really address it, in my opinion, at all in the draft, instead of taking, Trell Bernard, who is, a backup linebacker at this point, maybe some insurance for, Matt Milano if he gets hurt, or Tremaine Edmonds if he goes down. But I just would have liked to see them beef up their offensive line. Or again, as a Browns fan's perspective, I'm actually happy they didn't do that. But,
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, though. I mean, like I said it last night, when they got on the clock in the third round, I was like, because I had been home. I'd done a second round draft show for Woodward Sports that night, and I'd gotten home right around, it was probably, I don't know, it might have been right after the Browns selected Alex Wright, or maybe it was Greg Dulcich out of UCLA, something like that. And either way, I saw the Bills get on the clock, and I was like, okay, Dylan Parham is there, Sean Ryan is there, either guard, center combination, however you want to label them. Ryan's more of a guard tackle, Parham's more of a center guard type player. I would have been like, man, that would have been awesome to grab one of those guys and I agree, like the depth of their offensive line, Nick Cross, Kirby Joseph, one of those two guys would have made sense. I thought they could have looked at another safety in their defense. Then looking at the other linebackers, Channing Tindall, Leo Chenal, both those guys are there. Like, it didn't make a lot of sense to me to go the route that they did. You can do this on any draft, right? The second round, yeah, you have Cook. You look at the next couple picks, good players go. It happens in every draft, but this one just feels obvious. And I'm not rooting against the kid. I'm not saying he's going to be bad, but again, when you're only on the field 25, 30% of the time, I mean, AJ Klein only played 25% of the snaps last year. Is he going to get on there more than AJ Klein did last year? Probably not. I mean, I don't see how. If he does, good for him. Awesome job by being in this regime. But at the end of the day, like, I don't see how he fits and where he fits and how much he's actually going to play outside of special teams. And there's value to that. But third round, I don't know if that makes sense. So it's interesting. The Bills, again, though, good draft, give it a woo, type deal. But overall, like, it's just, I don't know. The Bernard one is the one that makes you scratch your head.
Yeah. So, if we look at the AFC East, I think the Bills had the second best draft of the AFC East to the Jets. Now, I don't think I don't think anyone would really argue that. Even most Bills fans probably would not argue that, at least not deep down. They may have the rose-colored glasses on a little bit, but And then the Jets came out number 1 in the AFC East for me, Bills number 2. And then I guess just based on picks, maybe the Patriots number 3, but I don't know. I almost like Tyndall the best out of anybody that was drafted between Miami and New England, even though Miami only had 4 selections. So those are both, not great drafts in my opinion. So, from a Bills fan perspective, they had a solid day. The Jets did get better, but again, they have the ultimate equalizer in Josh Allen, and that's what it's, really all about, in today's NFL. So if you have somebody like that, you're going to be in good shape. One question in the chat, what linebackers kind of came off, I guess around Terrell Bernard or after Terrell Bernard? You just mentioned it though. Channing Tindall went the next running back to the Dolphins, at pick, I think 102. Leo Chenal went to the Chiefs out of Wisconsin. And that was, I think it took some more, there's a little bit of time before you had another one go off in the 4th round there.
Yeah, I keep seeing the comment of, the Bills were looking for speed. I mean, we can't say that Bernard has speed. He plays fast, but we don't know what his speed is. He didn't run a 40. We don't know. So it's hard to say. And then when you look at his 10-yard splits, they're not great. His shuttle times, they're not, he didn't he's not like some elite athlete. I'm not trying to discredit the player, but his 3-cone drill was 7.03 seconds. Not bad, but only 66%, in the 66 percentile. 20-yard shuttle was 4.25 seconds, 64 percentile. 36-inch vertical jump. So good. He plays more explosive than anything else. He understands how to get the first step. He understands how to win there. But when you have shorter arms, you're a sub 225-pound linebacker. It's going to be tough. And again, maybe their board changed when Nakobe Dean went a few picks before that, and then they were just simply oh, well, we're going to have to adjust because the linebackers are starting to go, and we're going to take our next best one. Maybe they thought they were going to get Nakobe Dean, and if so, that would have been a home run for them, and I'd be wooing all over the place. But with Bernard, he is the head scratcher, and he's a guy that I don't want to say tarnishes this draft or ruins it, but he's the grease stain, right? It's you got a great batch of fries, everything's good, but then when you look on the paper towel, there's that grease. That's what he is. I don't know how else to summarize it. I hate saying it, but I like the pick. It's just it's confusing.
Yeah, for me, use another analogy, it's when you get, I'm a big curly fry guy, so you get the curly fries, and then you're getting there, you're eating your curly fries, and you have one regular fry kind of in there, and you're no, why you gypped me with this regular fry, my batch of curly fries? I don't like that. But yeah, and again, I think fit, or I guess fit is a question. Being able to get on the field early on is a question for a 3rd round pick, when I think there was offensive line help that could have been had, that in my opinion is more valuable right now than a linebacker. At this spot. But let's move on. So that was the AFC East. We are at 8:30 here. So, we have about 15 minutes left before we want you guys to stick around, obviously, and finish, listening to our conversation about other contenders and their drafts in the AFC, but also stick around for the air raid guys up at 9:00 Eastern. But let's head to the AFC North, a division that I think, definitely has some good teams, some contenders for sure. To potentially knocking off, the Bills or, being a thorn in their side. The AFC North, I think, will certainly beat up on each other a little bit, which will make it a little bit tough. But let's start with the Ravens. Everyone thought they had a great draft. I thought they had a great draft. Again, as a Browns fan, I was super not happy to see somebody like Kyle Hamilton fall to them at 14. Really didn't love Tyler Linderbaum, although I thought Tyler Linderbaum was, I believe in my official mock on the Cover One mock contest, I had Tyler Linderbaum going to Baltimore at 14, I believe. And then obviously they made the move to get him at 25. David Ojabo in the 2nd round, of course, again, from my perspective, I didn't want David Ojabo from a Browns perspective at 44, simply because I wanted a player that could be on the field this year. I like the player. I just wanted somebody that was going to, be on the field this year. And I actually was watching the draft and looked over to my buddy and was like, of course, somebody like Baltimore is going to get him. And this was 10 picks before he went. And of course, Baltimore freaking gets him, which is a perfect scenario. And then Travis Jones, D tackle. I liked Travis Jones. I loved your comments about Travis Jones and a lot of our, pre-draft shows. The Browns needed a D tackle, although I love the one they did get. But I liked Travis Jones. Daniel Falele, Minnesota, I think another decent pick. They went with some crazy athleticism and Isaiah Likely, and then Charlie Kohler at tight end. Ton of picks though, so I don't know. I'd be curious to see if all these guys stick. It's a ton of picks, but outside of maybe some of the guys I mentioned, or add on to some comments of some of the guys I mentioned, why was Baltimore's draft such a good?
Well, certainly, I mean, getting guys like Hamilton and Linderbaum to start day one for you is a huge home run. I mean, those guys are going to plug and play. They're going to be there for 10 to 12 years. I said it last night. Wouldn't surprise me if these guys were, and I said it the night of the draft because I was live on Woodward Sports when it was all happening at the Brass Rail. And I'm like, man, it wouldn't surprise me if these guys ended up being gold jacket type dudes for this team. Like, that's how good they can be and how good they already are. But David Ojabo at 45, I've been calling that for months. Like when the injury happened, it was simple. Everybody was like, well, where does he go? Like, is he still a first rounder? No. Where does he go in the second round? Is he a day 2 pick? When does it start? Like, what range? And I was like, it starts at 45 with Baltimore. I mean, Baltimore makes so much sense for him because of Mike McDonald going there to be the DC, Jim Harbaugh. If anybody knows anything on medicals on David Ojabo, it's Harbaugh. And it makes so much sense. And I saw some stuff in here, they had a ton of holes. Yeah, they had some holes, they had some issues on their team. I wish they would have, addressed one of the offensive tackle spots a little bit sooner. Like, not saying Daniel Falele's a bad pick by any means in the 4th round, but I thought maybe they could have gotten rid of one of these 4th rounders, maybe got rid of the Isaiah Likely pick, and maybe even the Armour Davis. I don't know much about the kid, other than, he's got good length for the position and everything else like that. But like, could they have packaged 2 of those picks and moved up for another offensive lineman? I thought that was an option. I wish they would have maybe addressed wide receiver after they traded away Marquise Brown. I get it. Like, they have a lot of receivers on their roster, but at the same time, like, it was a pretty deep receiver class. I felt like they could have added some type of speedster in there, but overall, it was a phenomenal phenomenal draft. So it's just, it was a Baltimore Raven style draft. These guys will play right away. And I mean, it's hard as a football fan. It's hard to knock it.
Yeah, certainly agree. But I guess if there is still one, kind of hole in their armor, if you will, you just mentioned it. Rashad Bateman really, Devin Duvernay. I don't know. Really, the only wide receiver of note. So that is going to be a problem. Lamar Jackson obviously gets J.K. Dobbins back, which is going to be helpful. Gus Edwards back in the run game. So, I mean, they're certainly going to be able to run the football, but maybe a little too one-dimensional right now. There's certainly still some free agent wide receivers floating around that could potentially join them and help. But yes, I agree. I think if, they took 6 4th-round picks, again, I'm questioning if all these guys are going to make the team.
Right.
You could have certainly moved up, probably use multiple picks and grab an offensive lineman and a wideout, and only had 2 4th-round picks or 3 4th-round picks and got some impact type players. But either way, though, still agree they had a woo draft, which is sad as a Browns fan. Let's keep going now. Let's keep going around the AFC North. Let's head over to the other team I hate even more than the Baltimore Ravens, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm just going to vomit anyways. The Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's head over to their draft. The Steelers, they took Kenny Pickett, of course, in round 1, 20th overall, and then they went and got George Pickens out of Georgia, 2nd round. Again, this is hilarious. I as a Browns fan, I put it out there on Twitter. I was not super interested in George Pickens in the 2nd round at 44 for the Browns, even though I wanted them to take a wideout. I feel like he's the type of guy, based on everything we've talked about on shows, that would come to Cleveland and not work out. Whether it's his attitude, whether it's the way, I just feel that I just did not want that guy on our team. I just didn't think he would work. That's the type of guy that never works here. And I, again, was joking with my buddy. I'm like, well, he'll probably go to the Ravens or the Steelers, though, to work. And, of course, Ojabo went to the Ravens and George Pickens went to the Steelers. And I'm like, God, right, that's going to end up being nice for them. DeMarvin Leal, 3rd round at the end. I liked him quite a bit. I think at one point going into this year in one of those, way too early mock drafts, he was like 5th overall going into 2022. Obviously, didn't perform quite as well this past season in college, but still I think that's a good pick for them. Calvin Austin, Connor Hayward out of Michigan State, brother of Cam. So what's your thoughts on the Steelers draft?
I thought it was pretty solid. I mean, I really did. I'm not going to give it a woo. I'm not going to throw up like you did. I do have a buddy that's a pretty big Steelers fan. And, he's very indifferent about it. He's the type of guy, they went 9-7-1 last year, made the playoffs, and he was upset about it. And I'm like, dude, you guys are doing a lot more than a lot of other teams. So Kenny Pickett going there, little surprised by it. I thought Malik would have been their guy from everything that kind of it heard and everything sounded like that. But getting Kenny Pickett to stay, in the spot that he's been for the last 5 years, it makes sense. I mean, the 2 gloves things, it's going to work there. He's going to play 8 or 9 games there every year. It makes a lot of sense. I think he's going to be okay for them, whether Mitch starts or not for a couple of weeks. We already know what Trubisky is, and I don't think he's going to be very good. But to add George Pickens into the mix with Chase Claypool, Miles Boykin, some of the players that they already have, adding Calvin Austin, like their offense is going to be a lot more than just one-dimensional, handing it off to Najee Harris and Big Ben falling over. Pickett can move around. He's got some weapons. Their offense is going to be okay. Defensively, we already know. Defensively, they figure it out time and time again. DeMarvin Leal, I was a little surprised he was there in the 3rd round. Getting him, though, a nice piece up front that I think can eventually become a starter at some point for this team. Maybe not, week 1 or anything like that. But again, having him there with Cameron Hayward, that's going to take some getting used to. Holy cow. Him with Cameron Hayward and stuff like that. Like it's going to do him well. And I think it's a good fit for him because, he lacked production this past year and he has all of the tools. If there's any team that can get the tools to work, it's the Steelers with Leal. So that's why I do like what they did ultimately. I don't know much about Robinson or the kid from South Dakota State. But the fact that the first 4 picks are going to be guys that play right away. Connor Hayward might even play right away, or at least special teams, and has a depth role as a fullback. It was a fun draft for a team that I think many people were looking at. The next 2 to 3 years were going to be pretty rough. I don't think it's going to be that rough for this team. I really don't. Cornerback might be on the outside there on their defense, might get tested. Offensive tackle might get tested, but ultimately, I think 9-7-1 or 9-7-1, 10-7, 9-8, 9-8, something like that makes a lot of sense for this team.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with your, I think your record prediction. I personally I like that they took Kenny Pickett. I don't know. I'm not. There's the Spider-Man meme floating around with like Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky and Mason Rudolph all pointing at each other. I don't know. I mean, obviously I could be wrong. Maybe it's just Browns fan hoping it's a bad pick. I would have hated to see Malik go there. I just think Malik could have went there and I would have been nightmares, right? So I was happy they took Kenny Pickett. I kind of almost thought they was potentially going to even think about Matt Corral. I thought maybe that was why he got invited to the draft and would come out of left field and be the pick for them at 20. But I'm not super scared of Kenny Pickett there at that pick. And obviously the quarterback position is the most important one. So the rest of the draft where I do like some of the guys they picked up, like I mentioned, DeMarvin Leal. I think Pickens scares me with a team like Pittsburgh just because of that tends to work out for a team like Pittsburgh or an organization like Pittsburgh. Well, it usually does not with an organization like Cleveland. For them, their draft for me was meh. I'm not, as a Browns fan, I wasn't like overly nervous or scared about their draft. Mm-hmm. It was okay. It was okay. And to be honest, if we move on to the Bengals real quick, and then we'll finish up with my Cleveland Browns. Similar for me with the Bengals. I didn't love the draft, didn't hate the draft. They started in round 1 with Daxton Hill, versatile guy, obviously out of Michigan. They, followed it up with Cam Taylor-Britt, cornerback out of Nebraska, who I thought was a pretty good pick. Zachary Carter, Florida D tackle. Cordell Volson, offensive tackle out of North Dakota State. So I like what they did as far as shoring up their secondary, because I think their defense really outperformed last year. I don't know. Going into the year, a lot of people were kind of down on the Bengals defense. They did not think it was going to have the type of a year it did, especially in the pass rush game, in my opinion. I think it's going to come back to earth a little bit. But I think it was good that they decided to shore up the secondary, especially in an AFC loaded with quarterbacks. So I like the direction they went. But outside of those 2 picks, for me, their draft was it was okay. So they get a meh out of me. But curious of your take on the Bengals.
Well, I thought Daxton Hill would have been off the board at 31, if I'm being honest. But the fact that they added him with Jesse Bates, like they needed some help on the back end of their defense. I like the fit. He might even play a little bit in the slot for them at times. He's athletic enough to really play anywhere for them. So I thought it was a good fit. Cam Taylor-Britt, I think is a kind of a slam dunk in the second round. I love that he went as early as he did. I really think he can play year one. I love how natural he is in zone coverage. He's got just a natural feel of understanding his drops and where to play. Great length. He shows great effort time and time again. So as somebody just mentions, couldn't have Eli Apple. Bengals couldn't have Eli Apple, the ability to keep making a fool of himself on social media. You're absolutely right. Cam Taylor-Britt, some people project him to play safety. I think he's going to play on the outside for them. I really do. Smart guy. Really liked speaking with him down at the Senior Bowl. Zach Carter from Florida. Nice depth piece for them. He'll probably bump inside as probably a 3 technique at times. He's physical though. He's got some power to him. Cordell Volson, probably one of my favorite 4th round picks, honestly. I've been watching this kid for 2-3 years now, and to see him go to a spot that has always felt like they needed offensive line help. To add him, I think he could be a plug and play guard for them. I really do. And so I think those first 4 picks were really good. Jeffrey Gunter in the 7th round, he'll bring special teams value. He's going to bring some depth value off the edge at times. But yeah, it was a good overall draft for them. It was a little surprising that, they didn't go offensive line a little bit sooner, but it ended up working out for them. And they've already added some pieces to their offensive line with Collins and Karras. So like they've done their work, and you add Volson into the mix, and they got a whole lot better this year. So as a Super Bowl contending team with Joe Burrow, I mean, I know you're a Browns fan. I don't mean to sting, but that's a woo.
All right. Well, hey, you know what? You're obviously the more of the expert myself. And again, like I said, I certainly liked what they were doing directionally, in the secondary. I think that's a smart move for them to shore up the defense. But I'm gonna hang my hat on that they're gonna come back down to earth a little bit. We'll see. But again, they have Joe Burrow, and if he plays like he did last year, that again the ultimate equalizer, just like Josh Allen. So if that's humming with Jamar Chase and that offensive receiving core, then there's certainly going to be a handful. All right. So what I want to do here, we got about 5-6 minutes left in the show tonight. I do want to hit the Browns. I want to hit the Chiefs, another AFC contender, and then I like the question out there by Pops Mafia. Obviously, it's really early, and who knows what's going to happen. Still free agency, that's going to take place, training camps. But who will be the offensive and defensive rookies of the year, just off the top right? So maybe start marinating on that a little bit. But before we get to that question, to end of the show tonight, Browns. Let's pivot over to my Cleveland Browns draft. They didn't have a first round pick, obviously, getting the services of Deshaun Watson. They then decided to trade out of 44, in my opinion, to try to recoup some of that draft capital that they had to give up to obtain Deshaun Watson. And then the 3rd round, they finally made a selection at the top of the 3rd round with Martin Emerson, cornerback out of Mississippi State. Nice size, 6'2", 200 pounds. But, for all intents and purposes, I think a lot of people thought that certainly was a reach there at that particular pick, especially when, not that it's ever a problem. I almost feel the same way to offensive line. You never can have too many good cornerbacks, especially today in the NFL, but they had other pressing needs. So that one was a little bit of a head scratcher for me. So curious on Martin Emerson, but I'll run down the rest of the picks real quick. Alex Wright, edge rusher out of UAB. 3rd round, David Bell, wide receiver out of Purdue. Also in the 3rd round, Perrion Winfrey, D tackle out of Oklahoma. And then they took a kicker, Cade York, also in the 4th round out of LSU. And we'll kind of, Jerome Ford, actually, Cincinnati. That's a somewhat intriguing pick to me as well in the 5th. So curious, what do you think of the Browns draft?
Well, yeah, I mean, Martin Emerson is a physical press man corner, physical in the run game. 3rd round pick. I mean, I was a little surprised that he didn't go a little bit sooner. He seemed to have been getting some buzz as maybe an early day 2 pick, a mid day 2 pick, middle of 2nd round or something like that. So going in the 3rd round, that's fine. He's going to play opposite of Denzel Ward. You just got to hope that he develops, and kind of with the track record that we've been kind of seeing with the Browns as far as developing some of these guys, I think you should be okay. I mean, Ward's been great, so you got to hope Emerson can kind of do the same thing. And if he can become that number 2, you're going to be just fine. Again, good length for the position, good size, physical. That's what you need. Alex Wright, it's a fine depth piece to their front up, to their defensive front. He's going to play opposite of Myles Garrett at times. He might even back him up at times. The key is, Jadeveon Clowney's gone, right? I don't believe he's back. So
he is gone, but there's a lot of chatter that he's doing the usual Jadeveon Clowney thing and just hanging out, and he's going to resign. So right now, if you looked at Vegas odds, I'm not saying he's going to resign, but there's a good likelihood that he will resign.
Right. So, and I mean, look, and you've got Chase Winovich, you've got this kid now, so you've got some pieces there to kind of mess around with. But we already know Myles Garrett's there; nobody's taking his spot. I don't think anybody expects Alex Wright to. You just got to hope that he can use his length at 6'5", 270, 265, somewhere in that range to really put it all together. David Bell in the third. I think you've been kind of wanting or talking about him a little bit for some time. Speed's going to be a problem. He's not going to outrun anybody, but he uses his length very well. He creates separation that way. Again, I think he's probably a big slot receiver at times. I think he can play on the outside. I do get a little bit worried about the overall speed of his game, but you put him here in this offense. If Deshaun Watson's the quarterback, he should be able to find him. It should all work out. Perion Winfrey and Isaiah Thomas. I'm going to talk about both these guys. The fact that they went to Oklahoma 3 times here. Winfrey it's impressive. Winfrey's somebody I compared to Nick Fairley. To get him in the 4th round, I was a little stunned. I thought he was a top 70, top 75 type player. So to get him where they got him, very impressive work by them. And really, I don't know. I know there was some character stuff with him. I know there was some stuff from recruiting visits and stuff where a lot of people had question marks. There was some off the field stuff, but while at Oklahoma. But he's disruptive, explosive. He's going to be a fine fit on the interior, and I think he's going to carve out a role as a starter. It wouldn't surprise me if he played more as a rookie than people expect. Isaiah Thomas, versatile, 6'5", 265. One of those guys that's going to probably play as a 3 technique, a 4-eye, a 5 tech. He's a very fun watch. He was the 7th round. That's a crime. I mean, whoever let him fall that far, it's criminal. Like, it should not be. Michael Woods. I mean, does this not scream Rashard Higgins to you? I mean, that's what I said on the day of the draft. Like, that's what they're going to hope that he becomes. Jerome Ford, loaded backfield. He's done it before, though. He's been a part of a backfield that had, Josh Jacobs at one point, Najee Harris, stuff like that. So he's been a part of some very talented backfields. I think he's going to be just fine. But, he's not like a sexy running back. He kind of takes what he gets. He goes north and south. He's got some fluidity within his lower half. But overall, I like the draft for them. It wasn't, sexy by any means. They have some guys that if they develop, it's a great draft. If they don't develop, and I mean, you could say that for any team, but there are some guys that I think have some just overall question marks going from the draft into the league. David Bell, can the long speed hold up? The long speed question marks. With Emerson, is he too physical? Is he going to be okay in zone? Does he have the ball skills? Like, is all of that stuff going to check out? Winfrey, can he stay out of his own way? Everybody else, though, should be okay. So, it was a good draft, not a great draft, but it was good, and especially considering that they didn't have a pick until the 3rd round.
Yeah, I agree with that. It was, I guess from our grading scale, it was a May draft, but it wasn't like a meh where I was like upset about it. It was kind of like, hey, again, no 1st round pick, no 2nd round pick. For me, Alex Wright and Martin Emerson, I thought there may be other players on the board, but again, I like the positions that they drafted. Fine. I really like David Bell, not that he's as physical as a Jarvis Landry, but I feel he's maybe going to play that role in this offense. Jarvis may even be back, but I think he has a chance to develop into that, especially with a quarterback like Deshaun Watson, if Deshaun is on the field. So I actually liked David Bell. I just remember him lighting up Ohio State and watching him quite a bit. So I like that pick. And Perion Winfrey, he already is a dog, man. He's just barking it up already, and he's been doing that for years, regardless of the Browns. So I love the possibility that he brings in the inside. And I know, kickers are kickers, but the Browns need a kicker real bad. And I certainly can remember watching Kaiir kick that field goal that was 57 yards in the fog live. I know the highlight floating around, but I remember watching that game live. So he certainly has some big game ability and some, has a big boot, in which the Browns certainly need. So I liked that pick as well. All right, well, real quick. We're not going to be able to break down the entire Chiefs draft, but I'm just curious, from a Chiefs perspective, just maybe give it the grade, the woo, the meh, or the vomit. Trent McDuffie, they got a cornerback there. pick 21 overall, George Karlaftis, pick 30 overall, Sky Moore, Leo Chenal. I mean, in my opinion, they had some decent players drafted here. What are your thoughts real quick on the Kansas City draft?
Yeah, that's a woo all day for me. McDuffie, one of my favorite players in the draft. I often said if he ends up going to the Chiefs, he's going to start day one. He's going to be a problem. I said the same thing about Roger McCreary. I think both those guys were great fits for their team, and the fact that they got one of them is awesome. George Karlaftis, they needed help on the opposite side of Frank Clark, and probably ultimately to replace Frank Clark, and that's probably the plan there. Sky Moore, going to be a fun player in the slot for them and somebody that they obviously needed. I never bought the Sky Moore first-round hype. I've said it time and time again. That's Dwayne Eskridge, Tutu Atwell all over again. Different type of player. They just got to hope that, he stays healthy, unlike those guys, and he plays and he produces. I mean, he's got Patrick Mahomes. He should be fine. Overall, Brian Cook, Leo Chenal is going to be great for them as maybe some depth guys, but also I think at times they're going to start. Joshua Williams, keep tabs on him. He was pretty competitive down at the Senior Bowl. Darian Kennard, same type of deal. Keep him as a backup, to Trey Smith. Trey Smith had some health concerns coming out, but Kennard could play. And overall, it was a solid draft that the Chiefs, they don't have a lot of holes. They have the best quarterback in the NFL, maybe the second best quarterback, however you want to shape it up. And they got a lot better during the draft. So that's a win-win for them. I know they made some questionable moves, getting rid of Hill and stuff, but this was a good draft for them. And there's no reason to not expect them in the playoffs. I mean, they're going to be in the playoffs. They're going to be competing, and unless it's just a catastrophic type thing this season, but I doubt it.
All right. So real quick, I don't know if you've been thinking about it, pondering it before we get on out of here. Maybe offensive rookie of the year, defensive rookie of the year, to kind of set it up. I'm kind of looking down this list at offensive rookies of the year, and I think it's interesting because you have guys like Garrett Wilson with the Jets that if Zach Wilson progresses, has a chance, but he also is potentially going to have to deal with Breece Hall, who, if he's getting carries, could maybe garner some attention there. Not is the Jets' offense going to be mature enough for either of them to, end up being in a rookie of the year type conversation? Chris Olave would maybe be my pick off the top of my head. If Jameis Winston is, New Orleans not hurt, I think that he's going to get a ton of volume. If Goff was better, I would be interested in Jameson Williams. But I think a lot of these guys, Drake London, they're all in very questionable situations from an offensive rookie of the year perspective, which makes that a really interesting and difficult question. So maybe offensive rookie of the year real quick, off the top of your head, anybody stand out to you that might be a leader in the clubhouse?
Well, defensive rookie of the year is an easy one. That's a layup for me. Nakobe Dean, odds are plus 1,800. He's got Jordan Davis, Fletcher Cox in front of him. How can you not be excited about that? It's exactly what he did at Georgia. He had big defensive linemen in front of him, eating up gaps in space. Dean's going to eat. He's going to feast. He should not have gone in the third round. So, bad shoulder, pack, whatever. He's going to play. He's going to be a stud for them. Offensive rookie of the year, I'm with you. I could see, I could see Chris Olave. If Jameson Williams plays the whole year, I could see that as well. Treylon Burks I'm interested in just simply because I think he can be a true number one receiver in an offense that's already kind of shown that they can click. Can Tannehill kind of, get out of his own way? And how much does Henry eat? How much production does he take away? And then maybe just a sleeper would be Ken Walker, out of Seattle. I really think he can take the backfield, take the reins there. Chris Carson, bad neck. Rashad Penny in an injury. I mean, it seems destined that Kenneth Walker can be the guy.
I actually agree with that a lot. I was going to mention Kenneth Walker. Again, I think to your point, he's potentially going to get the carries. Curious what happens there offensively. Quarterback situation very up in the air right now, who they're running with Drew Lock, right? So who knows how good that offense will be. But if they maybe if they go make a move for Baker Mayfield or something like that at some point, or can shore up the quarterback position, that offense can be good enough. And again, I think he, to your point, is going to be able to potentially get the touches to be in the conversation for an offensive rookie of the year. But all right, well, hey, as always, my man, good stuff. We got to get out of here. 4 minutes till the air raid hour. It was awesome talking draft with you, doing some recap, going around some of the teams that are contenders in the AFC. It's been a great process, an awesome 11 weeks talking draft with you. So appreciate you and appreciate everybody out there in the chat. Make sure you subscribe, give Cover One a like, give this show a like. Follow us on the Twitter at Burn River Sports, as well as Russell at Russ NFL Draft. As we look into the summer, we'll be talking fantasy football at some point. We'll be talking some sports betting, and of course, all the usual great coverage on Cover One from Bill's standpoint. But Russell, any parting words this evening?
No, just thank you to everybody for, following along all draft season. It's been a long process. It started back in the summer, and now we're obviously here to the finish line. We'll kind of pick it back up in a couple of weeks. I'm going to kind of reset and kind of put the board back together. I got some names up there I got to erase, and I got to get ready for 2023, but watch some NFL stuff, just kind of refresh a little bit, but we'll pick up on the audio side in the coming weeks. It'll be a lot of fun, and obviously just find both of us, like he said, on Twitter, at Russ NFL Draft, at Burn River Sports. It'll be a lot of fun. Appreciate it, everybody. So have a good summer if I don't talk to you.
All right, everybody, we are out of here. Once again, this was Russ, and we should have done the Russ and Rich show. How did we just now on the last episode miss that potential tagline, the Russ and Rich show? But NFL Draft Weekly has been awesome. We are out of here, guys. Have a great night. Stick around for Air Raid up here at 9 o'clock Eastern. Later.